Hi, my name is Hailey Labrosse, and I was assigned the drug LSD to research today. What is LSD? LSD is also known as lysergic acid diethylamide, which is a synthetic substance made from a fungus that frequently infects rye. It is regarded as an empathogen, a substance that heightens sensations of empathy and connection. Due to the way LSD alters cognition, mood, and perception, it is referred to as a psychedelic or mind-manifesting substance. High doses cause visual hallucinations, addition to altering one's perception of time and space. Users' desired outcome of the drug. Most users of LSD use it to experience a good trip, which is also to escape from reality and to search for a sense of euphoria. Users also take LSD to get away from problems that they may be facing, also as a therapeutic way, and also to distort the world around them to feel at ease. Here are some LSD effects and withdrawal timelines. Within about 10 minutes after ingesting the drug, the user may start to feel some effects such as a sense of euphoria. Around 45 to 90 minutes after consuming LSD, the person may start to experience physical symptoms. These can include a rapid heart rate, nausea, and vomiting. Around an hour after ingesting LSD, visual hallucinations begin. Many people say they see colorful dots and pixelated visuals at this time. Around 90 minutes after taking the drug, these effects intensify. The peaks of the hallucinations is around 3 hours after taking LSD. The user will often start to experience reality again after about 5 hours, and the LSD effect should be fading after about 10 hours. After around 16 hours, the drug effect should be completely gone. After this point, flashbacks and other emotions can occur for days, weeks, months, or even years. Taking LSD frequently has many short-term effects such as hallucinations, visual and audio-wise, quick heart rate, warped sense of time, mystic or religious experience, dry mouth, nausea, and dizziness. One of the very common long-term effects is a disorder called hallucination persisting perception disorder, which is also referred to as HPPD. Some of the withdrawal symptoms of not taking LSD are dread of going insane, depersonalization, and derealization. You could also face some anxiety, fall into a psychosis, could also suffer from concentration problems, flashbacks, and or suicidal thoughts. The cost of LSD can vary from who and where you buy it from. For a single dose of LSD, which is 1 tab, could range from anywhere from $5 to $20. If you buy in bulk, which is an entire sheet of tab, which is 100 tabs, could range from $500 to $1,000. You could also buy liquid LSD, which is 100 doses, for around $200 to $400. LSD has many street names and nicknames. The most common ones are acid, microdot, Looney Tunes. People may also call it yellow sunshine, battery acid, and pure love. Pure love being an effect of LSD, which you can feel love more intensely, which is why they call it pure love. LSD with other drugs, one of the most common ones, is black acid, which is LSD and PCP combined. In the next video I'll showing is how LSD affects your brain.
Also known as acid, is a psychedelic drug famous for LSD, also known as acid, is a psychedelic drug famous for altering your perception and creating hallucinations. But how does it actually work, and what is the effect on your body, and more importantly, your brain? Lysergic acid diethylamide was first synthesized in 1938 from a fungus that grew on rye. In 1943, the inventor Albert Hofmann accidentally touched some to his mouth, got high, and became the first person in the world to learn about the psychedelic properties of LSD. Research on the drug took place in the 50s and 60s, but as recreational use began to spread, psychedelic drugs were made an illegal Schedule I drug in the US, and the research programs were halted. While other drugs are dosed in grams, a single dose of LSD is measured in 1/100,000th of a gram, which is 1/10 the mass of a grain of sand. LSD affects multiple brain receptors such as the dopamine receptors, adrenergic receptors, and glutamate receptors, but most research is on the stimulatory serotonin receptor 5-HT2A. LSD hits the receptor at an unexpected angle, causing it to fold over the LSD, creating a lid. The LSD is then trapped, which makes this receptor continually fire, causing you to hallucinate. Your body responds by sucking the 5-HT2A receptor into the cell in order to degrade the LSD, but this can take up to 12 plus hours to happen, which is why the high can last so long. Recently, LSD research has seen a revival, and using contemporary neuroimaging techniques, researchers found that the drug causes parts of your brain to communicate in unique ways, especially in the visual cortex, potentially explaining the vivid and complex hallucinations. There's also decreased blood flow in the default mode network, correlating to strong changes in consciousness characterized as ego dissolution, described as a feeling where the boundary that separates you from the rest of the world dissolves. Many people report this feeling brings a sense of reconnection with themselves, others, and the natural world. In fact, a study on 20 healthy volunteers receiving 75 micrograms of LSD saw that 2 weeks after being dosed, they scored higher for the traits of optimism and openness, with increased creativity and imagination. This has led researchers to think about LSD as a therapy for patients with death anxiety and life-threatening illnesses. Researchers found that 12 months after treatment, patients reported a reduction in anxiety and a rise in quality of life as the drug helped them restructure their habits and worldview. It is also why the trend of microdosing is emerging, where a person takes 1/10 of a recreational dose of LSD, attempting to skip the hallucinations and instead experience heightened alertness, energy, and creativity. Although LSD is non-addictive and researchers rate it as significantly less dangerous than other drugs like cocaine and heroin, there's still an extreme lack of scientific studies to explain the widespread microdosing trend, and even experienced hallucinogen users will sometimes experience bad trips, producing irrational fears, paranoia, and panic attacks. LSD can also cause flashbacks, where months after the drug is worn off, it can feel as though you're experiencing the effects of the high all over again. In some extreme occasions, people have developed hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, which is like a never-ending trip. Thinking that LSD can lead to psychosis and the risk of suicide are overstated. The 14% of participants in the US National Survey who had done psychedelics in their life had no increased risk of developing psychosis, depression, or suicide attempts. But the new research around LSD's potential positive effects is also very young, so this might not be a trip you want to take. Want to learn more about your brain on drugs? Check out our
LSD is used to treat many different disorders such as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, drug dependency, and reducing anxiety in patients with life-threatening diseases. LSD's ability to help people perceive the larger picture beyond their specific issue is associated with weakening or dissolution of the ego. The following medications have demonstrated efficiency in the past at treating HPPD, which is again hallucination persisting perception disorder and flashbacks. The following medications are benzodiazepines, anti-epileptic medications, selective re-up inhibitors for serotonin, also known as SSRIs, antagonists of the long-acting opioid receptors. The last video I'll be showing today is an expert explaining how dangerous LSD could be.
So some critique over the use of psychedelics as medical treatments is that they're particularly dangerous. Now, I want to be clear, every medical intervention and every psychoactive compound has risks. The key question is, what are those risks and what can we do to minimize those risks? In the big picture, the harms you see from psychedelics, even though they're real and we know what they are, the prevalence of these dangers pale in comparison to other psychoactive substances, both illegal and legal substances. So numerous scientific investigations have had experts rank order the harms to the user and the harms to society in general across a wide variety of compounds, legal and illegal. And what's happened time and time again when people bring objective data to these questions is you see at the top of the list, it really bears little relationship at all to legal status. So at the top of the dangers list, you'll get compounds like tobacco and alcohol. Consistently at the far other end of that continuum are psilocybin mushrooms, ranked as the lowest amongst all the major psychoactive compounds in terms of harm to self and harm to others. And LSD is in a very similar position. Relative to other psychoactive substances, psychedelics are really freakishly physically safe. For most people, there's no known lethal overdose amount for psilocybin or for LSD. The ways that you take too much of a drug and they do you in, none of that stuff happens. One of the amazing things about the classic psychedelics, like psilocybin and LSD, is that they're not addictive. They can be abused, meaning they can be used in a dangerous way to the person, but they're not addictive. No one's jonesing for their next shroom fix. So we know a lot about these risks of psychedelics, and one of the major factors that we know that separates riskier use from less risky use is the presence of a sober guide. The more it looks like the clinical research where the person is not alone, they're with someone they trust, there is control over the dose. And it's going to be in a safe environment where they're not worried about making sure no one assaults them or steals their wallet, the less likely that they're going to run into pitfalls. There were a lot of overstatements and urban legends about the dangers of psychedelics. Things like, that it was common for teenagers to stare into the sun and burn their eyes blind because they were on LSD. There's no credible evidence that ever happened. Also, certainly the bad trip is a real phenomenon. It's relatively rare, but sometimes people have accidents and sometimes people die when they're having a bad trip and they panic and they fall from a height or they wander into traffic. These things have happened. But, some of the research from the 1950s through early 70s, they gave a giant dose of LSD to someone and then locked them in a padded room. One of the trials, looking to see if LSD could help people with alcoholism, they literally tied people down in restraints to their hospital bed, gave them a massive dose of LSD, 800 micrograms, and they didn't give them any warning that, that they took this substance that would profoundly alter their conscious experience. So we've figured out a lot since then with that sort of research. Those are the conditions under which, when you do get experiences that look more like psychosis, you treat the person like they're going to go crazy, and a lot of times they, at least temporarily, they feel like they're going crazy. However, if the person is in a safe environment, the drug will wear off and they'll be fine. I'm not encouraging it, but there are a lot of overstatements. And so I think psychedelics big picture can help us move towards a world where we start to understand what it takes for the human being to be mentally healthy. What can we do in the spirit of prevention? It holds a lot of promise in helping us figure out what the nature of mental disorders are and also how to prevent those disorders. That's not to say that there aren't dangers. There are very real dangers with psychedelics. But we know what they are, and in the grand scheme of things, they're just far less prevalent than the harms we see from some of these other compounds out there.
Here are some facts about LSD that many people may not have known. LSD is not as concrete with its effects as other drugs are, meaning that its effects vary from every person. And numerous amounts of people that use LSD experience horrific hallucinations that can last up to 12 hours. Once a person takes LSD, There is no stopping the drug. LSD causes people to experience visual hallucinations and delusions. These are sense of time changes, and they may not even know who they are. While on LSD, the shapes and sizes of objects become distorted, as well as colors and sounds. A person on LSD may get their senses mixed up, causing a user to see sounds and think that they hear colors. This distortion can be extremely frightening and can cause people on LSD to become to panic. A person using LSD has a higher chance of hurting themselves or accidentally killing themselves. When on LSD, a person will be seeing and feeling things that they are not real. This can lead to them making poor decisions without realizing it, such as running into traffic because they thought something was chasing them. Here are some myths about LSD that you may have heard about. Myth number 1 is LSD always produces an enjoyable high. LSD can produce an enjoyable high, however, the experience of a bad high is always a possibility. LSD is considered to be a club drug since it's used primarily at parties and nightclubs because it's supposed to produce a euphoric high. Many people ingest it at parties, however, due to many environmental factors such as the surroundings, company, etc., that can lead to overstimulation. It does not always equal a enjoyable experience. Many people reported feeling intensely anxious or paranoid, which a party environment is likely to be. Myth number 2 is frequent LSD use causes you to go insane. LSD is a short-term drug that wears off and leaves no lasting effects due to its chemical makeup. LSD is quickly immunized and broken down by the body into inactive compounds before being passed. Myth number 4. LSD will help you discover your innermost self. This is probably the most common myth of all. LSD provides a different experience for everyone. Many believe it produces an intense psychedelic look into your inner being that helps to uncover your deepest self and promotes a surreal level of self-discovery. Some more facts. There are several uses for LSD. Scientists now considering psychedelic drugs like LSD to be possible treatments for a broad range of psychedelic elements such as alcoholism, schizophrenia, depression, and autism. Also, recent studies have shown lower suicidal rates and often mental health disorders among people who have used psychedelics. Fact number 2 is you cannot prevent a bad high. It has been long said that having a friend to guide you on your LSD experience can prevent you from having a bad trip, while having a sober friend along the ride to help you guide through sounds good in theory. There is no sure way to prevent a bad trip. Researchers have found that external factors such as a setting you are in can have an effect on the experience, while taking precautions to influence a trip positively can be helpful. They are not guaranteed. However, having a bad risk you take when you use LSD. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation on LSD today.